Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudidayet Nashta Prayeshva Padreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Continuing on the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 9, Prahlad's Prayers. We're on verse 16. In the previous verse, we heard about what Lord Prahlad Maharaj is not afraid of. He's not afraid of Krishna's form. He's not afraid of Krishna in any form. Verse 16. Trastosmyaham kripana vatsala sahogra samsara chakra kadanagra satam pranita pattasva karma pirushattama tenkri moolam prito pavarga sharanang vayase kadanu. O most powerful, insurmountable Lord, who are kind to the fallen souls, I have been put into the association of demons as a result of my activities. And therefore I am very much afraid of my condition of life within this material world. When will that moment come when you will call me to the shelter of your lotus feet, which are the ultimate goal for liberation from conditional life? Purport. Being in the material world is certainly miserable, but certainly when one is put into the association of asuras or atheistic men, it is intolerably so. One may ask why the living entities put into the material world. Indeed, sometimes foolish people deride the Lord for having put them here. Actually, everyone is put into conditional life according to his karma. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj, representing all the other conditioned souls, admits that he was put into life among the asuras because of the results of his karma. The Lord is known as Kripana Vatsala because he is extremely kind to the conditioned souls. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, therefore, the Lord appears whenever there are discrepancies in the execution of religious principles. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. Tadatmanam surajamyaham. The Lord is extremely anxious to deliver the conditioned souls, and therefore he instructs all of us to return home back to Godhead. Sarvatirman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. Thus Prahlada Maharaj expected that the Lord, by his kindness, would call him again to the shelter of his lotus feet. In other words, everyone should be eager to return home back to Godhead, taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, and thus being fully trained in Krishna consciousness. Jai. Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shrakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Putre Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatideshatarane Vanchakalpatarupshascha Kripa Sindhupya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So we heard in the previous verse about Prahlad Maharaj's lack of fear, the absence of fear, although living in the material world. Now we hear about the presence of fear, and I'm going to try to reconcile that. So previously we heard that Prahlad is unafraid of any form Krishna takes, and he sees that Lord everywhere in the material world because everything is connected to the Lord, and so he's never really separated from him. So in today's verse, he does talk about fear, having fear. He's talking about the positive fear that comes when one is Krishna conscious and remembers and doesn't forget their constitutional position. Because that constitutional position, that never changes. That's the definition of constitutional. That's who we are. And it's one of dependence. It's one of being very small. And one can only truly understand that when one is Krishna conscious, because it's a relative consideration that I see Krishna, therefore I see myself, right? If like If it's completely dark out and you have no artificial light, you can't even see your hand in front of your face. You can't understand anything about your own, even external form. But as soon as the sun rises, you can see that external form of yours. And you can see, oh, wait a minute, need a shower or whatever. Oh, I've got a cut. I've got this cut on my hand, a bruise. When did that happen? You couldn't see that. Although it's tiny and insignificant compared to the size, the majesty of the sun, you can see it as soon as the sun rises. So similarly, we can see our own self, including scale. A good map has a sense of scale. We can see our own self with scale when we see Krishna. So Prahlad is demonstrating that. He's showing that God realization includes self-realization, right? So he's demonstrating that he understands his position. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's spiritual teachings begin really in the second chapter when he starts talking about how the soul is constitutionally different from matter, and it's actually amazing and astonishing. The word in Sanskrit is ascharya. Ascharya. Ascharyavat pashati kashtadenam. It's the beginning of a verse where he talks about how in so many ways the soul is remarkable, it's astonishing. And this is self-realization. When one starts to realize, whoa, I'm actually amazing, and so is everyone else. And we are. And the reason that we're amazing is because we're a little drop of Krishna, who is incredibly, supremely amazing. Prabhupada says on the spiritual platform there is perfect, more perfect, most perfect. Nothing is not perfect. Everything's perfect. Everything's Om Purnam, including the soul. We're also perfect, but we're a little perfect. Lowercase p. Krishna is supreme perfect, Maha perfect. And so Prahlad knows that although he's great, he's a soul, he's eternal. Still, because he's so Krishna conscious, he processes his material situation through the lens of seeing how great Krishna is, how large, right? One of the meanings of great, even in English, is large. We get that in Sanskrit too. Maha means great, like wonderful, amazing, but also means large. Krishna is so massive, and we're so small. And so he's factually, just in a practical way, he's remembering his own insignificance. Which, how does that play out? It plays out when you're in the material world and there's some circumstance and the material energy is moving, and you remember, yeah, I'm actually really small and Krishna is really big. And so there is this positive affirmation of Krishna consciousness. Yeah, I need to take shelter, right? Prahlad doesn't really need to be reminded that he needs to take shelter. As Prabhupada points out, it's kind of like this is what the pure devotees do. This is how they act in the material world because of the influence of the Leela Shakti. Under the influence of Krishna's energy of the pastimes, they are put into a position where they act in ways we can relate to. Prabhupada uses the term, he says here, therefore Prahlad Maharaj, representing all the other conditioned souls, admits that he was put into life among the Asuras because of the results of his karma. It's not that Prahlad is actually conditioned, but all of us are. And so Prahlad is showing what it is to process being in the material world with all of its ups and downs, which is basically, because all the ups are relative anyway, it's just a series of confusing movements, basically a lot of downs. And he's showing how to process that in terms of Krishna, that we see, okay, all these things are coming and going, there's so much change. I'm actually very vulnerable at all times, and I have agency in all that. I have some culpability. There's a sense of personal responsibility here that characterizes a devotee. Even if one is not a pure devotee like Prahlad Maharaj, when one comes to the stage where one realizes, actually, I have no one to blame for being in this world in the first place. There's no finger to wag. There's no arm to raise in indignation. There's no complaint office where I can submit a complaint. It's just, I chose to be here, actually. This is not random. I'm not here because of random forces. I'm actually here because of Krishna responding to what I deserve and what I desire. When one comes to that stage, one is already very firmly a devotee, because that is actually an extremely mature stage. And that's what Prahlad is trying to usher us into, is a sense of functional responsibility. This is not low self-esteem. Oh, I'm so bad, I'm so fallen, I deserve suffering. Oh. It's not like that. It's very sober. It's drama-free. Low self-esteem is very dramatic. Krishna consciousness is drama-free. It is a drama-free fact that nobody enters the material world, into material consciousness, into some sangha, into some situation randomly. There's some reason for them to be there. And that's not meant to put anybody down or victim shame. It's meant to create compassion for ourselves and for others, right? If you can see how you're suffering in the world and realize everyone else is suffering, and then understand that we have some agency, we can actually come out of that as much as we can go into it, then you can have compassion. So Prahlad, he's seeing, I was put into the association of asuras, terrible association. His father was the biggest, most inimical, demoniac person ever. He was so powerful that he actually was able to execute a plan to basically make himself God, in every way. He had conquered, what to speak of this planet, he conquered the entire middle planetary system, all the lower planetary systems, and all the higher planetary systems. So Indra, Brahma, all the demigods had to bend their knee and bow their head to him. This is how powerful he was. He had the forces of nature at his disposal, practically speaking. And he was completely hell-bent, sold out on the idea that there is no controller but myself. So Hiranyakashipu is representative of the false ego, completely enabled to its fullest degree. Now imagine, that's your daddy. That's who you're born into. But from the moment of his birth, in fact before that, because he was hearing from Narada in the womb, Prahlad knew the truth. He knew that there is no competitor to Krishna. We're all just part and part. We're all just very, very small parts and parcels of him. So he could see the dissonance between the lies and hype and propaganda and weird dysfunctional patterns of everybody around him and the undramatic truth, right? And this is actually totally relatable. Because when you come to Krishna consciousness, guess what? Anybody who's a little bit thoughtful already has a reservoir they've banked of reasons why they realize this world is absolutely bonkers. There's some really terrible ideas going around, and things are wild, and there's some people out there with crazy perspectives, right? That's already banked just by being in the world and having a little bit of sattva. Honestly, even just rajas, because it's the tamasic ideas already look insane from rajas. You take that and you process it through the lens of Krishna consciousness, and you realize, oh yeah, I'm surrounded by a propaganda machine in the form of advertisements. I'm surrounded by power structures in every way that are corrupted by people who are themselves beholden to the modes of material nature. And therefore they have all kinds of ideas in tamas and rajas. All kinds of them. And even the ones in sattva, which are few and far between, if devoid of Krishna, as Narada Muni says, they're not even very useful or don't even satisfy the soul, right? So the devotee is actually able to feel, I'm surrounded. I actually am so small. And what to speak of Krishna? Krishna's energy is so big. I'm in the middle of an ocean. This is why this is the favorite analogy for the devotees. The ocean of material existence, right? And this is because oceans are terrifying and they're gigantic. And it's 2026. We've made so much advancement materially, but still, if you toss somebody in the middle of the ocean, what are they going to do? They're going to die.
Drown.
And there aren't really that transatlantic, trans-Pacific, transoceanic liners, because it's extremely dangerous and time-consuming and not particularly comfortable. So there's your analogy. It's you're being tossed around the forces at any moment, like it's quiet, it's calm, it's peaceful. Next thing you know, it's a storm so powerful you're praying for your very existence. That's material life. Or things are going good, and then all of a sudden you're becalmed. You can't even move. It's complete inertia, no movement, right? Before engines, you had to rely on the wind, and if the wind just died, you couldn't do anything. If you had a backwind, you could maneuver somehow, but you have no wind, you're in trouble. So, also just relying on technology is a form of, although we don't want to believe it, it's a form of dependence too. You know, it's like, oh yeah, I'm in the middle of the ocean, I'm fine. Why? Because I have a boat. It's got an engine. Okay, well, what happens if the engine stops working, right? So the devotee never forgets that they're always dependent on Krishna, and everything they see in the world that's, to one degree or another, insane, just reminds them of their dependence on Krishna. And the word insane is actually completely appropriate. It comes from Latin, sanos, which means healthy, right? Healthy, functional. It's like almost like a stand-in for dharmic. Something that acts according to its nature is actually healthy. So Prahlad is seeing all these people acting outside of their nature by trying to forget Krishna, and he's saying this is very unhealthy. This is actually insane. And I am in a position where I'm affected by them. I'm around them. I have proximity to them. And it's nobody's fault but my own. This didn't happen randomly. This isn't something that I can micromanage, and I can create a situation where I have perfect Sangha. I have freedom from the modes of nature. Guess what? That was Hiranyakashipu's plan. That's his whole agenda. I can actually rise above. I can actually get free from suffering, right? No, I can't do that. Nobody can do that on their own. Only Krishna can do that. That's a Krishna conscious realization. That as long as we're here in this world, we're dependent on Krishna's mercy. And if we're somewhere else, we're dependent on his mercy there. It's actually always true. And so Prahlad doesn't fight that. He doesn't resist it. He's not resisting reality. He's actually grateful because he knows Krishna will always come through. And part of Krishna's greatness is not just that he's all-powerful, he's all-merciful. So Prabhupada focuses on this purport that the Lord is known as Kripana Vatsala because he is extremely kind to the conditioned souls. That feeling you have when you see somebody who's in an inferior position and your heart becomes like a little bit warmer, like, you know, if there's a child or somebody who's suffering, somebody who's poverty-stricken. I mean, the shortcut is anything that's smaller than you, you know? Look at like, look at the response that humans have to baby animals, right? It doesn't matter what they know or don't know about the animal. As soon as you see like something smaller than you, it's like, oh, it's so cute. What is the cuteness factor? I mean, anime, the Japanese like animated arts have like completely weaponized this because they take any like representation, make the eyes really big, make them look like a little baby, and it's all automatically cute. What that feeling is that you feel like you want to give protection to this. You want to give care, right? This person is dependent. They're weak. You know, that's what we feel when we see like a little a bunny rabbit. It's like that's some version of that. That is like a reflection of what Krishna feels for all of us because we're eternally so small. And he's like, oh my God, so cute. He doesn't actually say, oh my God, probably, but so cute. And he wants to like, you know, so it's like, that's an analogy. That's how we can actually kind of analogize what Krishna feels for us. He's always the Lord. We're always the child. And he's always unfailingly pouring down affection and mercy. So Prahlad doesn't forget that. He knows, like, yeah, I'm in this terrible situation. Yeah, it's my own fault. You know, I'm here because of my own choices. And Krishna will show up for me. So practically, what does it mean for devotees? It means that devotees aren't making excuses for their situation, right? Oh, I couldn't make the right choice because I was born in a tough situation. I had a bad family. My father beat me. My mother didn't give me enough hugs. And it's, you know what? Those things may be true, but they don't avoid their own responsibility for their own choice now. What are you going to do with the hand you've been dealt now? That's all we can do in the material world. And a devotee is saying like, okay, I'm here, but I'm not going to waste time shifting my responsibility for my choice now onto some other situation, because that actually is just a trap that we can use to avoid our own agency. because it's too scary, right? It's too scary to be like, actually, I can make a difference now. Because then what if I screw up? What if I'm not good enough, right? So Prahlad, he's showing us, look, there's no making excuses. Don't avoid your own power. Don't avoid your own agency to actually do whatever you can right now that you know is right, no matter how the deck seems stacked against you. One, and two, understand you're not doing it on your own. You don't have to do it on your own. That's what devotees are all about. They're all about, Krishna, I need your help, right? And so we see over and over and over again, and the acharyas, they show this. These are amazing persons. If you're in the same room as like someone like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Lochan Das Thakur, Narottam Das Thakur, the gopis of Vrindavan, you'll melt. You'll just melt. These persons are not of this world. They're so pure, so amazing. And yet, what are they saying, right? Lochan Das Thakur, he sings, Padamakaruna, Bahudvijana Nitai Gaura Chandra. He's glorifying Nitai Gaur. Beautiful bhajan. Just like 4 stanzas, very short. He's talking the first one about they're the essence of all appearances of the Lord, Nitai Gaur Chandra. They're giving a path of bhakti that's just bliss. The second stanza is saying, he's saying, oh my brothers, everybody, please just worship Gaur Nitai, give up your sense gratification, and firmly engage in chanting Hari Hari, Krishna's names. The third verse, he's saying, if you just look at how merciful Gaur Nityananda are, actually it can make a rock melt, and it can make a beast, an animal, start to cry. Just thinking about how merciful they are. What does he say in the fourth verse? He says, Sangsari Majia, Rohili Padiya, Se Padina Hilayasha. I'm immersed personally. He talks in the first person. I'm just like bobbing up and down in the ocean of suffering. Why? Because I don't have any taste. Because of the previous sinful activities of my own choosing. I, Lochan Das, he names himself, I don't have any taste for this beautiful movement of Gaur Nityananda. And someone can be like, oh, wait a minute. If that's who I'm listening to, why do I bother to listen to their song if they're so unqualified? No. Don't mistake him. This is a symptom of his qualification. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, bhajan after bhajan after bhajan. If you want to have a good time and feel better about yourself, read Gopinath. He's a beautiful bhajan where he's praying. Practically, you can't read it without crying. He's like, oh, I'm so fallen, Gopinath. I'm so full of anger. I'm so full of lust and hypocrisy. Only you can help me. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is showing us what it's like to be a conditioned soul and have those problems. But he's showing us how to go to Krishna with it, right? So on the one hand, we don't avoid our own responsibility. And then, after we do that, we take the opportunity to choose to go to Krishna, which is the best thing you can do with your responsibility. The best thing you can do with your God-given free will. No matter what your situation is, to turn to Krishna. Bhaktivinoda Thakur does it. Lochan Das Thakur does it. And if you can see your own faults, that's not a bad thing, because you can actually weaponize them to help yourself advance in Krishna consciousness. This is different than dramatic low self-esteem. It's like, oh, you really have to help me because I actually am so unqualified. I really need to take shelter because I am so unqualified. I really need you, Krishna, because I have made bad choices. It's actually just fuel for taking shelter. And anything that's fuel for taking shelter becomes spiritualized, including fault-finding, including seeing your own problems, including noticing how whacked out and messed up and unsolvable the world is, right? That same thing that drives philosophers insane. Look at Friedrich Nietzsche. Look what happened to him. That drives observational comics into a state of depression. That same thing, realizing how absolutely bonkers the material world is, can be amazing and transformative in a positive way, uplifting, if we use it to turn to Krishna. The same thing that freezes people, that becomes a stand-in for actually taking making any choice at all. Noticing that I'm flawed, I have problems. I've created my own. I'm the architect of my own misfortune in so many ways. That same thing actually becomes incredibly empowering when we connect it to Krishna. It's like, actually, Krishna, I am so small. I'm not able to by the power of my magnificent intelligence or bodily construction or anything else, I can't get out of feeling pushed down by the bad association I made, by the bad choices I've made, by this tough world. I'm really small. I need your help, Krishna. That actually becomes a shortcut to spiritual advancement. So Prahlad is showing some very, very subtle but very powerful tools for devotees who are living in the material world, which everybody is. And so we're deeply grateful to him for these tools, how to process the external and internal suffering, how to process personal insufficiency in Krishna conscious, in a Krishna conscious light, in a Krishna conscious way, and not either freeze or even regress, but go forward, make positive advancement. I mean, it gets to the point, actually, it's so dependable, this process, that you can take it to such an almost absurd degree where you have someone like Kunti who's like, actually, Krishna, if I had my choice, I would go all the way, I would get my little time machine out, I would go all the way back to when we were being just pounded on by everything, left, right, and center. We were alone, we were desperate, we were unfunded, I was a single mother, we were in the jungle, literally, but you were with us. They were trying to kill us, left, right, this way, that way, the other way, they were trying to murder us. It was an absolute fiasco. I miss those days, Krishna. Because that was when she felt she was most Krishna conscious, because she had all the impetus in the world to feelingly call out. You know, if you don't feel like you have to chant, and therefore you're like, yeah, I could chant or not chant. Anybody relate to that? It's like, yeah, I've already chanted a bunch of rounds. I don't need to chant right now. Mm-hmm. But what if you're in that mode where it's like, oh, if I don't chant now, I'm not going to finish my rounds today. If I don't get another round in the next 6 minutes, I got to show up and look my Guru Maharaj in the face without even chanting my rounds. What about that? What about a sense of desperation then, you know? Then you chant with feeling. What to speak of when you're chanting and you're like, oh God, Krishna, forget all the formalities. I actually really need you. Please help me. You know, then it's like all bets are off. Then things actually become completely, it's not material anymore. Then you can actually become a completely different person in a few seconds. Krishna can make that happen for you. So Prahlad is ushering us. He's opening the door. He's saying, look what could happen if you weaponize your own fault finding. Find your weakness. Find your insufficiency. Find the absurdity of the material world, the craziness, the diabolical nature of the choices people are making, and use it to dive deeper into Krishna's mercy. And a lot you can say on this. We'll pause here and take reflections. Hopefully it was cogent and helpful. Hare Krishna. Om Tat Sat. What did you hear?
Wonderful class. Thank you, Shamyan. Something that stood out to me was just the truth and the reminder of God realization includes self-realization. And so that in order to, and it ties into also how you're speaking about, well, if I don't actually believe I need help, right, am I going to call out? And am I going to think I won't think I need Krishna, and I
the first step is admitting you have a problem.
Right.
If you can't do that, you don't have any entry into the 12 steps. They're just material solutions. But it works on the spiritual level. You have to actually admit. Right. Otherwise you can't receive anything.
Right.
Your cup's already full.
And then, in order to actually be Krishna conscious and have God realization, it requires first having self-realization, like realizing that I have these faults, but I am not these faults, right? Realizing that I actually am the soul and I am in need of reconnecting back to source.
Right.
Right. And that in becoming Krishna conscious, like that happens first.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing because we don't actually independently try to figure ourselves out. I mean, we may, but that's not what we're advised to do. All we do is we just chant Hare Krishna. We do the same thing we always do at the level of beginning practice or perfection. We're chanting, we're hearing, we're associating, we're serving. That's it. That's all it is. But you start doing that, all of a sudden you realize yourself better.
Right.
You realize the world better. You start to have solutions to problems better. You start to see your constitutional position. You're like, oh, wow, I really am small. I do need help. That wasn't because you saw yourself. It's because you saw Krishna. I gave the analogy of the sun rising. So yeah. And then when you start to see your own insufficiencies, and then it can actually become a level up to take shelter more. Mm-hmm. And then your God realization expands. And then you actually you're less self-conscious and you're more Krishna conscious. I was like,
Right.
yeah, I know how small I am, but I'm not really wasting my time thinking about that. I've already done the work of using that fact to point myself at Krishna and be really urgent about it. Now I'm just spending all my energy thinking about him.
Yeah.
That's a very advanced stage. Then you're blissful. That's what Prahlad was talking about earlier when he said, "I don't feel any suffering," right?
Hmm.
Because that's the stage of like I just see Krishna everywhere. But this stage is the more relatable stage that we can actually do something with
Right.
at our level of practice. Like, no, we are small. We are deeply flawed. We're still making mistakes. And here's how that's Krishna conscious.
Right.
Yeah.
We're flawed, we have faults, and we're also perfect and special and all
Yeah.
of those things all at the same time. And so is everybody else. And everyone else has faults and flaws, and they're unique and special, like all of those things. And so then I was also thinking about how when I realize my faults and my anartas, I that can propel me to really call out to Krishna and bring more urgency and ask for help in my sadhana. And I can also take steps and do my own work and
Yeah.
to grow and evolve and heal. Like it's thinking about how we often talk about it's 50% endeavor, 50% mercy. So it isn't. I believe, or at least for me and the work that I do in the world, it's like recognize that and expect and know that by turning to your relationship with God, like that those anartas and through our practice those knots will be removed from our heart and we can take steps in our lives to
Yeah.
also work on that.
It goes faster.
Mm-hmm.
It goes faster that way. The japa affirmation this morning, practically all the japa affirmations touch on this principle in some way or another. Mahatma Prabhu was saying that there's so much power in deciding, like, this is the line of
Yes, my
acceptable japa for me.
non-negotiable.
Anything below this, I'm not okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
So if I see I'm slipping or I'm beginning to go down towards that line, I do whatever I need to do to stay above it. It's like there's a certain kind of attentiveness. There's a certain kind of
Discipline.
discipline. Yeah, discipline is from the Latin discipulus, which means student.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Disciple is the same root. It's like I've decided, like this is what I'm going to do, and so I've got my eye on the speedometer. Like, am I going down, or I know when I'm like letting my foot off the gas, and I'm not okay with that. So doing the work, and that can also show up in our non sadhana
Yes.
life. Is like, oh wait, I'm really taking this person for granted. I've really not been returning their calls. I'm not making eye contact. I'm not like asking them what they want. I'm just being selfish, or I'm actually abusing my body right now. I'm not taking care of it. I need to go outside and move around,
Mm-hmm.
or I've been neglecting my intelligence. I've just been consuming useless things. I need to actually stimulate it because it's also like it's got its own dharma. If you don't challenge your intelligence, next thing you know, you have no one to blame for being kind of dull-witted
Mm-hmm.
and or whatever. And we have so many aspects to ourselves, our relationships, our money, and just taking responsibility to make better choices is exercising our responsibility. And generally, if you're coming from a place of sattva, you're not just like, yeah, I gotta make more money because that's good, because money is good, rajas. If you're coming from a place of sattva, then taking responsibility for anything, financial, physical health, emotional health, relationships, community, is always pleasing to Krishna because it creates a more stable and healthy unit.
Mm-hmm.
And it creates a ripple effect where you and everyone around you become supported. So it's not outside the realm of Krishna consciousness to be like, you know what? I'm going to deal with this lower back pain once and for all and start going to yoga classes or whatever.
Yeah.
Please pray that I do that. Hare Krishna. Yeah, more reflections.
Thank you for such a wonderful class. Appreciate it. I was thinking about the what you said. I have no one to blame for where I am in the world. I choose to be here. I chose to be here. Um, and then Krishna put me here where based on what I deserve and desire. I think it's really interesting. I was thinking about things that happen in people's lives and you know feeling like a victim for so much of it. And it's interesting that once you like let go of that victim mentality, it's a sense of freedom from that past negative thought pattern. And then then if you make space for Krishna consciousness, it's, there's a little bit of irony there that you make space for being completely dependent.
Yeah.
Like, so there's like freedom in not being a victim and then comfort in being dependent, which in the material sense could seem a bit at odds.
Right. It almost looks like giving up one addiction for another.
Right.
Yeah. And yet the lived experience is quite different. Yeah. And as far as the victim thing, it's really interesting because sometimes people misunderstand the philosophy of karma and they see it as victim blaming. And responsibility, I just wanted to say this because any conversation or discussion that centers around like taking responsibility for one's own suffering in life, this has to be said, I think. There's different levels of responsibility. So just because somebody comes to the mature stage, it takes some doing to come to the mature stage to realize, not be shamed into or like, you know, be forced to think. Actually realize, no, I have no one to blame. This is just my existential situation, and Krishna is not making anything random happen. That doesn't negate anyone else's responsibility in abuse. And they're creating their own situation by doing different things. So there's different levels of responsibility. Actually, one may think like I am responsible for my own choices, and that person over there is responsible for what is happening right now. And that's under their power. Maybe there's a legal consequence to that. Maybe there's an emotional consequence. Maybe it's like, you know what? I don't want to know them. Arm's length or more. Maybe that's a consequence. The two things don't contradict themselves. It's just not just because because karma is a thing, therefore anybody can do whatever they want. No, that actually misses the point. You can't do whatever you want. Nobody can do whatever they want and get away with it. And we can choose to be responsible by responding, but we can, if we do that in a way where we've already owned our own agency, it's drama free. Whereas the victim thing is like, how dare you? That's coming from drama because we feel we're a victim, because we haven't come to that realization yet that nobody's a victim. As soon as anybody is perpetrating some suffering, they're suffering themselves, now or later. And better now, because if they don't do it now, they're going to pay later with interest, and it's going to get ugly, right? So nobody's getting away with anything. And if you realize that, then it's just undramatically like, no, you crossed the line. You have to actually deal with that. And so just putting that out there because it's just a classic thing to misunderstand karma and to go into victim shaming, victim blaming. And I know you're not doing that, but the undramatic truth is that when one advances in understanding Krishna and sees their own dependence, they also become more responsible. And they're more able to respond to transgressions because they get freed from the knee-jerk reactions of rajas. Tamas is like, oh, I'm so bad. Okay, abuse me. And rajas is like, how dare you? I will fight you tooth and nail. I will rip your head off of your torso for what you're doing, And Sattva's like, I love you. And it's not okay. And there's consequences. And that's how devotees can function because they become freed from the drama. So even if somebody is deeply invested in making the world a better place and free from vicious exploitation, which by the way is impossible to do if you're not actually Krishna conscious, if they want to do that, they should be Krishna conscious because nobody can make a difference in rajas. You can't. You're spinning your wheels. It's a relative difference. You can make some difference, but that's a different topic for a different day. Yeah. Haribol. More reflections?
Thank you so much for class. Thank you. Yeah, just pondering on that radical responsibility. And I know that people can be victimized, but a victim, in my experience, never recovers. Somebody who stays in that space of, look what's happened to me. So a lot of times when I'm praying to Krishna, I'm not necessarily saying take away this stuff. I'm actually asking, please enhance my virtues. Please help me to do better and be more in line with your will for me rather than, I've been so fallen, because he knows that. Believe me, he knows all that. So I really instead try to just enhance my service to you and to others, and to do your will, which is to love everyone around me. So that helps me sometimes. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, it's kind of a fact that we don't really know how much good we're capable of under Krishna's influence, when we're empowered. Because it's not a material calculation. You can't possibly understand that from within the material energy. Like what you could do armed with, purified by Krishna's mercy, his bhakti energy, the association of devotees, the descending mercy of Lord Chaitanya, who's causelessly kind to the suffering souls. And that's a powerful prayer to invoke. It's like, please Krishna, let me do some good. Let me do your will. And when you're in that flow, it's very difficult to think about and to perseverate, like to focus on, but all that time that happened and all that. It's like, who cares? Krishna's mercy is present right now. It's flowing for me to actually like benefit from and help others benefit from. What does it matter what happened in the past? So it's very proactive. And it turns out that Krishna is much bigger than Maya, which is a good thing. So when you're in his flow, the material nature doesn't really matter at all. Prabhupada likens it. He says that when you're actually in that flow of the internal energy, even leaving your body is as insignificant as a drunken person losing their coat. You drop it along the way. You're like, oh, where did that go? Oh, I guess I forgot it. So devotees are so intoxicated with Krishna, they just leave their body like that. It's like, oh yeah, I guess I'm in the spiritual world now. I guess I died. It's insignificant for them, the comings and goings, the things that are so shockingly large and dramatic that material people are stunned or can't even look at. Oh, death, let's not talk about that. For a devotee who's choosing, more Krishna, more service, more empowerment, it's just it's blissful. Yeah, they ride those waves, no problem. Jai. From the comments, Leanne says, I really like the... Oops. I can't read it now. Can you find that again for me? Yeah. You gotta scroll. There we go. I really like the reflection of what you said about how we see ourselves when we see Krishna. I'm reflecting on this about how he shows us every part of ourselves and how he helps us to take responsibility for our lives. Thank you for talking about this today. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, reading these verses, chanting Hare Krishna, being with devotees. I find it happens especially in attentive japa for me. Attentive japa and good reading sessions, that you see parts of yourself. I'm saying you see it. Really, what happens is Krishna shows it to you, and it's a gift. It's a little gift. It's like, here you go, check it out. You say you want to serve me, so what can you do with this? How can you spiritualize this, or what does this mean for you? And it's just a consequence. It's a natural consequence of serving Krishna. Yeah, free gift. Sometimes you get a signing bonus when you go with a company or whatever. Free bonus. Yeah. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Prahlad Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Now let's offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord who are just like desire trees. They can fulfill all the desires of everyone and are full of compassion for all the fallen conditioned souls. Jai. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anandakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai.
Jai.